Welcome back to CodingCat.dev, where we give you cats the freshest dose of dev snacks. Brought to you by Cloudinary. Build faster with AI-powered image and video APIs. Need better search? Try Algolia, powering discovery. Welcome back, perfect peeps, to CodingCat.dev. Today on the podcast, we have Amanda. How are you doing, Amanda?
I'm good. I'm working on little sleep because my daughter didn't allow me to sleep much tonight, but I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. You actually, on your blog, you had how to do DevRel as a first-time mom and developer relations. So we might have to figure that out a little bit more because I still haven't figured it out. And as we were talking kind of pre-show, my son's 15 now, so I don't even know how people do it. It's crazy. First, I want to kind of get to know you a little bit more so our audience members can get to know you. A little bit about your background would be amazing. I think you started out at university and you're a
Yeah,
Bachelor of Technology in Computer Science, right?
I think I started even before that. We're talking about kids here. So my father used to write code in assembly and Fortran. I don't know
Oh
if you've
my
heard of
God.
these.
I
So
actually had to learn a little bit of Fortran going through college. So that shows my age. If the white hair didn't give it away.
yeah, so I grew up with my father doing these things, and he also had a course in electronics, and he loved, what's the name in English, the outlets, the things that you plug. He always was like, oh, we could do a new one. So he was always building stuff and just having
Interesting.
everything laying around in the house. And he was always keen for me to learn. We had Legos. Like I was always, I don't know, very stimulated, like to know everything tech ever since I was a kid. And so I come from Brazil, and back in those days, you don't really had computers or internet or anything. But because my father worked with that, I was one of the few people who saw computers at the age of 6. So I had the computer with like the turbo button, and I thought that would make anything better. So like growing up, I was always decided I was going to study something related to computers. I just didn't know what or exactly what I was going to do. But then I just gave it a name, computer science. And when the days were reaching that you had to choose which university you're going to study, maths was never my strong suite. And everyone was always like, yeah, telling me the stereotypes and everything. And maybe that's not for you. And you know what? In the end, you do study maths. It's hard and everything, but they have libraries, they have books, they have amazing people to help you out. So I did have to go through it. It wasn't that easy, but in the end, I also studied the computer side of things. And then what happened was I was 4 months to graduate in computer science in Brazil, but I moved to the UK. I'm going to make that very short. I was supposed to come here for just a month, but that month turned into almost 10 years now. So I found a Brazilian university that I managed to graduate in the UK. But
Did you start university in Brazil and then?
Brazil.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's interesting.
And whilst I was there, I was always studying. I was doing scientific initiation, and I never thought I actually work as a developer. I always thought that I would eventually become a professor or something like that.
Yeah.
But once I heard about the money and the experiences and the things that you could do, I went straight away to being a dev.
Yeah, it gets a lot of us. Those dollars always kind of mean a lot to us. I don't know why. I have to ask, when you were going through your educational side of things, were you like, when you started out, was it in Portuguese then, or did you do everything in English?
I think that when you study computer science, I'm going to generalize here.
Sure.
So you have to know English because most of things, documentation things are written in English. My professors in my university in Brazil, they did come from different countries. One of my professors could only speak English, but all the others, they could speak Portuguese, but some of them, they were from Peru, I can't remember all the countries. But yes, we had some foreign professors, but they would speak in Portuguese, except for one in my course.
Wow, that's incredible. I always wonder about that. My son's bilingual, and he goes to a Spanish immersion school, and so I'm always like picking people's minds on like, do you dream in English now that you know English and stuff like that? So it's kind of wild to think about. And I was joking with our Firebase group when we were out at IO, that they're like, the translations aren't that great, blah blah blah. And I looked at him, I'm like, do you know anyone that doesn't read the docs in English anyways? And they all laughed. They're like, "Yeah, that's true."
So are you bilingual as well?
I am not. I'm the worst. I'm the most stereotypical American, unfortunately.
I love it.
So,
Um,
sorry, I completely interrupted you and derailed
no,
you.
that's
So
fine. So
so we're
yeah, so I
in the
studied in that
UK.
university. Then also the one that I found here in the UK, they spoke Portuguese because it was like a Brazilian university that had a polling here. I forgot at which part I was, but yeah.
And
So I studied that. I
and
completely.
then so, like, you're in the UK at this point. Did you
Yeah,
start, like, immediately looking for jobs
yeah, I
post-college?
remember now what I was about to say.
Okay.
The thing is, I don't know how it is nowadays in Brazil, but back then, when you were a junior, people were expecting you to be a senior, but to pay you like a junior. But in here, I was actually a junior. I learned Ruby on Rails, Ruby. So I learned Ruby like in the job. So that was
That's
fantastic. I
incredible.
got all the foundation that I got from university, and I learned a programming language. I never really liked Ruby. I always liked
No.
JavaScript more, but I did learn that on the job, and I'm super proud of that.
That's really
Um,
cool. Yeah, it's hard, I think you and I have very similar backgrounds. I thought I was gonna be a professor, and never really go out, and then I did, probably the money thing, again. But it also was one of these things that, like, I had my Apple II down in my basement, and that's all I wanted to do. I didn't know what I was gonna do in computers, but I knew I
yeah,
wanted to do something, and once you kind of even through college, like, you learn certain languages or you learn certain skills, and then it's like, well, here's a job that doesn't do anything along those lines. Do you want to take it or not? And it's like, of course. And so if as long as you can find the opportunity that'll let you learn on the job, it's pretty incredible to do those things. So I actually learned SAP and ABAP for mine, and it was like drinking from a fire hose back then. So
oh wow. Yeah, I was thinking of that because I was just so decided that I was going down that path. I remember my professors used to do when we were submitting papers. So never ever, if you get married, don't change your surname. Because now once you start with papers, like keep your surname. And like I was thinking about it just these days, like it doesn't matter because I didn't go down that path.
that's funny. My wife and I were just talking about, we have friends that they had two completely, well, obviously they had two different names. When they got married, they didn't take either of their names. They just made a new last name. I was like, oh, I've never heard of that. And then she's like, yes, you have. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's kind of a cool way to like just completely switch it up. I like that. So it would mess everyone up.
Yeah, then you mess all the sides up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then whilst I was in the pandemic, I was thinking about that. Like, I still wanted to study more. So I found, again, a post graduation. I don't think you have that in America, but like we have post graduation that you could do. Not sure if I'm saying things that exist in English, but you can do stricto sensus or lato sensus. So let's say one of these is more like a master's degree, the other is more like I'm not going too much mastery. That's the one that I did.
Ah,
Some people
okay.
call it MBA. So I did that, and then I finally felt happy because I felt something's missing, something's missing. So I did that during the pandemic, and now I just feel like I'm happy now.
That's incredible. So did you have to do a actual, like, thesis or a paper that you had to publish as part of that?
So we did have a thesis, but it was nothing fancy, just a project that you had to show in the end, and I actually used Firebase for that.
Ah, yep.
Yeah, of course.
That got you started,
Um,
huh?
Yeah. And I think I didn't also talk about the other side of the things that I do for the community. So when I arrived in the UK, I always liked meetups and attending these things, but in Brazil, the city where I lived, Belo Horizonte, in Minas Gerais, we didn't have meetups back then. Today is a whole different world, but back then we had one a month, and I didn't even like the topics. I just went because it's the only one we had available. And then I went to meetup.com and I saw 6 meetups a day. Wow, which one do I choose? So
Sure.
I chose one just because I saw the name Google. That's the name that I recognized. So I went there and I helped them out because I was just so keen on doing everything. And then within one day of attending, they welcomed me to be an organizer. And I've been doing
Wow.
that for 10 years. Yeah.
Oh my
Then
god.
I became a Women Tech Makers ambassador, and I've been hosting events here. So this month I hosted 2. I do the Women Tech Makers Coffee and Code. So we go there, we enjoy some coffee, we do some tutorials using Vonage APIs and using Firebase services. So some people, some people they want to go and just to have a chat, to leave the house. Some people they go with projects and they want to see. I really like meetups because they're informal. People just come with
Yeah.
what they have. I really like that type of format of events. And I also became a GDE for Firebase, for AI/ML, for Dialogflow. And on that line of thought, I was also for Google Assistant that nowadays no longer exists.
Yeah, I just had to turn off some of my data flow stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, assistant. That was a thing at one point. You're gonna have to teach me
You're
how
a
to.
GD as well, right?
Yeah, I'm a GD in Firebase. Someone asked me the other day how long, and I have some pins back here, but I don't actually
Ooh.
remember. So, uh, I think this one only goes back 4 years though. Yeah, I think those pins only go to 2020. I know I was a Firebase GD before then. But I'm gonna have to figure out how you were able to become a GD in other spots, because I definitely want to like become a web GD and an Angular GD and stuff like that. And it's always just kind of been like, do I need to? I don't know. And so I kind of always leave it alone. But anyways, we'll get to that maybe after the pod. I was really curious on the meetup side of things. What's your opinion after kind of COVID or like through COVID, in-person events? Do you find like they were hard to get back people to come back to it, and are they kind of seeking that more now, in your opinion?
If they're seeking out to get back to in-person events,
Yeah.
um, so let me answer your 2 questions. The way that I found how to finally leave the virtual events and go back to in person was doing these events at these coffee shops that I still
Mhm.
do. Because the thing was, people didn't want to take public transportation, but they wanted to
Ah,
walk.
okay.
People were walking without their masks on the street. So we started to get more local people to attend. And then because you're there, you're going to enjoy a coffee, you take your mask off. At some point, no one is wearing that anymore. So that's how I eased back into that. I think here in the UK, I don't remember years or months anymore. It just seems like a different life.
Yeah.
But at some point, like people are still walking in with the mask, but they would take them off.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think nowadays in here, I don't see anyone wearing a mask
No.
anywhere, to at least to the places that I attend. Not even when I go to the hospital, maybe just the people who
Oh,
are working there,
okay.
just like it was before. So I don't really know when the switch happened, but to me was with these small events. And to be honest, I haven't been to many big events anymore,
Okay.
to even tell you about. I'm going to some more. Maybe we can talk about them
Yeah.
afterwards. But to me, I've been doing the smaller ones. They really resonate with me.
Yeah, I love being able to sit down with people and especially like cover if they have questions and not just kind of talk at them. And I've always felt that way in university too. When like someone's just up at a podium talking at people, it's like, are you really learning? Like, let's interact for a minute. People have questions about what's going on. So I love like a
I
small
have the
venue. Yeah. I even love like somewhere between like 30 and 100 people to get up and like teach them something, and then like, okay, we're gonna do Q&A. Like that's my favorite. I just love doing it.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
thing also about Q&A. Sorry, you said okay, but I'll just say one more thing
No, no.
about Q&As at talks, because sometimes questions are just so specific to your use case that I think it's always better like wait for the person to leave and just ask your question.
Yeah, that's a really tough piece of that too. Like sitting through other people's questions you already know the answers to. It's like, okay, I want to get to mine. Like it's so difficult to sit there. I completely agree. I wanted to finish out before we kind of do the presentation side of this. you finally ended up at Vonage as a developer advocate. Do you want to talk just a couple minutes about what that's been like?
Yes, I actually joined during the pandemic. So that's when I started to doing all my events virtually. And then I became a mom. And then there was no traveling again. So it's funny because I've been here for 3 years now, but I'm doing all my traveling and everything like just this year
Oh
starting
my
now.
gosh.
Yeah, so this year I just feels like I'm trying to make up all the time that I lost. But it's been amazing because all my team are in different parts of the world. I have so my line manager Michael, he's in the US. I have some people in Singapore. Like it's all around, but somehow it just works. Everyone respects time zones. We have some meetings for people in
Nice.
different time zones. It's just I really like working there. I feel like I'm growing a lot in my career. I don't do like just one thing in DevRel. I'm doing blog posts. I'm giving talks. I am doing product specialist things. I'm interacting with product managers. I just feel like I'm doing so much. I really like working there. And one of the things that I've been kind of learning these days are the network APIs. I'm still not super professional at that, but my talk is about that. So I kind of like to do these things as I'm learning something. I give
Yep.
talks and people ask me questions. I'm like, I don't know, but I think that really helps me to learn and to just teach people, developers, how to learn things better when they ask me the questions, and then I find the best way to explain.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm part of a Discord, Learn, Build, Teach with James Q. Quick, and we just talk about that all the time. Like, you don't have to be an expert to like teach someone it. You'll learn as you go, and as long as everybody's comfortable with that, we'll just keep going on. So I love that mentality. Okay, so with that said, we're going to talk about using Firebase with communication APIs. I'm going to take a quick sponsor break to pay the bills, and then Amanda's going to do a little slideshow when we get back.
Cloudinary allows you to remove any unwanted backgrounds, so you can reuse assets efficiently. You can also erase objects and people from images for placement in new experiences. For more engaging content, easily turn static images into dynamic animations, and rely on smart cropping to always deliver assets with a focus on the most relevant objects to your brand. Cloudinary Programmable Media. Build faster with AI-powered image and video APIs.
Algolia helps you create a search and discovery engine in 3 steps. Step 1, import your data. Import the API client, initialize the client and index, load the local JSON file, and then push to Algolia. Step 2, configure relevance. Define searchable attributes, add business metric, specify facets and filtering. And step 3, build your search UI, import widgets from the library, add instant search component, add search input, refine by attribute, display results, add pagination. And just like that, you're done. Build search effortlessly with Algolia.
All right, Amanda, are you ready to present?
I'm ready.
All right.
Okay. So this slide, I usually introduce myself, but we just did that. So let's get to it.
I love the background and the slide design, by the way. It's incredible.
Oh, thank you. They're really good at that at Vonage. I really like the colors and everything. So I built a demonstration today about account recovery. I'm going to start off by showing it, and then I'll explain everything about it. So let's get to it here. So I have my login form to my fake bank account, but I forgot my password. Really bad at that. So I forgot my password, and I'm going to send a code to my phone number to recover it. Okay. At this point, I'm using the Vonage Verify API. I'm going to get a 4-digit one-time code to my phone. I just got it. 4317. Okay, and I'm going to put a very secure password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I changed my password. At this point, I'm able to change my password because I put in the correct PIN code in there. And because my password is very safe, I got a breach thing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I manage to, okay, to log into my bank account. So let's say that I forgot my password. I put in my phone number again. The autofilling is not working, so I'm going to copy and paste from my environment variable. Okay, so I copy and paste this phone number. And by the way, this phone number that I'm adding here is a Spanish phone number that can accept the SIM swap API check. What it does is when the SIM was changed in the last N days that you can set the days in your environment variable. I'm just receiving it again. You can set the days for when you want to check. And what it does, it checks against your provider if that was changed. So that's really interesting to use the network APIs to do that. So because you can see if something happened to your SIM, you can, yeah.
No, I was just impressed that you can do that. Can you do that with like eSIM as well? Do you know?
I think at the moment you can't, because you need the phone number to be connected to numbers which are in Germany and Spain, but that's going to grow.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's my personal opinion, that this thing is going like, that's the future. So we're going to see more things in that. But for this one to work, it has to be a number that was already vetted to do that. So I'm also running that API in here before I do that. Otherwise, you wouldn't even get to the point of being able to verify and to change your password. So that's the demo. And let's get to everything about it. Okay, so this is the overview diagram of everything you've seen. I hope the size is good enough there. So what happens is the user is going to log in, try to reset the password, and to verify the identity. And that all happens in the web front end. That interacts with Firebase functions. So I am adding all the functions there with Firebase deploy, and all the information is being stored to Firebase, Firestore, NoSQL database. So every time I store or retrieve something, that my user credentials, everything is happening in there. To check the SIM swap details, we have to check with the communication service providers. You just asked me about that. So the list right now, it's just 2 countries and just some CSPs that are available. So I'm guessing the eSIMs don't work just yet with this API, but keep an eye on it. So we check the SIM swap details with the Vonage communication services. Back to the user, when they click that they forgot their password, they're going to get the verification one-time code that's going to interact with the Vonage Verify API. So I think that's everything I'm doing. And finally, the web front end I'm hosting using Firebase hosting, which is funny. I was just talking about the events that I attend. We were learning how to use hosting, but there was something new called app hosting that came out just a few days ago. And they're like, oh, but I have to add my credit card. But no, you don't. This part you shouldn't do. And then after some point, realized they were using app hosting and not hosting.
Yeah, that's totally. I actually commented to them when we were at Google I/O. I'm like, this is gonna get really confusing, and they're like, right now we have to make a clear distinction because hosting is free and static sites and things like that, and they really wanted to break that up. And I'm like, I get it, but it's also a little confusing too. So it's
a little confusing. Yes, I was actually reading the documentation and seeing if they intersect. There's a lot of intersections. So
yes, yeah.
My personal opinion is that that's going to change on how people see it. They're going to realize it's.
I think there's a lot of cost that they're trying to deal with internally without giving too much away. Like obviously, the stuff that's public now, there's kind of like Cloud Run and global CDN that gets spun up and things like that have fees within Google Cloud GCP as a whole.
Yeah.
And so for the app hosting side, that's a big difference than the standard hosting. It used to just be a nice static hosting provider that you could spin up very easily. So there's a little more cost on their side that they're, I think, trying to figure out where they take that in the future. But we'll see. I hope they combine it at some point.
Yeah, that's the thing, because for this example here that I created, I'm using hosting, but I'm also using functions. I believe that maybe with app hosting, I could do everything there. I haven't played with it yet.
Yeah, I think the one difference, not big difference, there is a lot of people right now with the hosting situation. So let's say, did you write this Angular? Is that what?
No, this
What
is JavaScript, vanilla
with
JavaScript.
JavaScript?
That's what I
Nice,
do.
beautiful. So just standard like JavaScript, so it's all static. It's
Yes.
static JavaScript and CSS and HTML and stuff like that. And then the Firebase side for the functions piece has kind of another directory that you probably wrote TypeScript, Python.
No. So everything's JavaScript and Node. That's
Okay,
what I do.
JavaScript. Yep. Sorry, I said TypeScript. So those are written in JavaScript too on the back end, but they're in kind of their own like functions folder within Firebase.
Exactly.
I think what a lot of people are used to now with the larger meta frameworks like Next.js or Nuxt or SvelteKit, or you can go down the line, is that instead of using like Firebase functions, they'll actually use the functions directly within their meta framework to create those. So the kind of that web front end Firebase function piece all gets globbed into one, and they're not technically Firebase functions under the hood they are. That's the fun part, is kind of talking through what that actually means. But
Yeah, that sounds like, because I did this this demo without any Firebase at all, and then I had to add all of the blocks. Maybe that way would have made my life easier.
It could have, yeah, and that's some of the challenges, and I think they're gonna struggle to kind of figure that out. They right now, I think what Firebase is ultimately trying to do is catch up with the Vercel to like offer all of these different paths and how to host. So I think they're doing a good job. They definitely have a lot of road ahead of them to catch up. So
Yeah.
which is funny because Firebase was like the de facto like easiest way to host for so many years. With the
Yes.
meta framework changes, it's just kind of completely flip-flop the game a little bit. So
Oh, but I also believe that the thing is, you can go and do as fancier things as you want, but also if you want to keep doing the simple thing, that's also going to cater for that.
yes, 100%. Yep. I do have to ask, so there's not like a traditional like IDP in here. It's basically you're just taking and storing like a user in your database directly, right? When you like to get that verification the first time, are you passing around like a JOT token? I say JOT token. I always do that wrong, but like a JSON
JWT?
web token. Yep, a
Yes.
JWT.
Yes.
And so is that created through the Vonage API for that?
Yes.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yes, we can use either the command line, the CLI, or we can use a website to set that one up.
So that was like the first time you logged in there and you had a code come through. That was when that initial like API was created and you got the JOT back into your front end at that point.
Say that again. When?
So I think you ran through like you basically did like a sign up and got a code, and then after that you did a password reset, right?
Yeah. So the idea for that demo is I already have a bank account in there and I forgot my password. So I'm resetting a password for an account that already has a login and a password.
And so you're not using like Firebase authentication of any kind. It's all
No. So I started going down the path, but my demonstration was starting to get so big.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm going to focus on just a few things, but definitely this is not the best way to deal with the authentication in terms of login and password. We could definitely use the authentication which there is on the Firebase console, and then in there you could choose which social that you would want to log in. You could use email and password. You could use Facebook and different ones. I'm not handling that part. Everything is in my database, which is incorrect.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I just want to understand like if therere's anything else in the
I
mix.
really like it. Like you're paying attention.
I try. I work in authentication all day, so I'm getting better at it.
Oh wow! So maybe in the end you're going to teach me things.
I doubt it. You're doing great.
And for the people listening to this, like if you want to go and judge the code and give your opinion, everything is available on GitHub, and I've shared the link. It's going to be available in the description.
Yep. And actually, I will share it out on screen right now. If I had that loaded at one point, I think this is it.
Yeah, thank you. But in the end, you're not going to copy and paste that.
No. So this will be out on I don't know that I'll put it on YouTube. We usually don't add a lot of detail out there. But
Okay.
there should be a link if you're watching on YouTube. There should be a link back to the CodingCat.dev site directly to this post, and it'll have all of the information that Amanda has provided for all of the details here. So you'll have this plus everything else you'll need. Cool.
Okay, carry on. So what we have to do, we have to set up Firebase. And actually just yesterday, I was changing the logo because it changed. So I have a slide here showing the logo, and the Firebase logo has been updated. So the way that we set it up is that you go to the Firebase console, you create an account. If you don't already have one, you could use your Google account or a different one. Then you click to create a new project, you give it a new name, you choose if you use analytics, you wait for the project to be created, everything cloud to be spun in there. You set the billing account type, and you have to set it to Blaze or pay as you go. It is required when you're using third-party APIs. And then you set the Google Cloud resource location in your project settings. I know this is a podcast, so many people are not going to see what I am showing, but basically it's what I'm saying. So one thing that I always think about when I'm creating my project IDs is that because I'm going to use hosting most of the times, I always go into the pencil or pen or whatever that is, and I make sure that I don't use the one that was initially provided, but I create a name that would look nice with web.app or web.dev. I can't remember right now. So that's always one thing that I always think about. The project name is okay to write anything for you, which is easy to find, but the project ID, think about like if this project really grows, a name that would be easier for other people to find it. I don't know if you do the same, Alex.
I do a little bit. Like when I have kind of just demos, I don't care as much, mostly because I usually end up putting a domain, like a subdomain or a domain in front of them. So yes, I totally agree with you though. Like if you're just going to have the web.app, it's 100%.
Yeah. And then, as I said, you choose if you're going to use Google Analytics. And then that's the thing, because people are not seeing what I'm showing. I'm sorry, I'm not very.
This is totally fine. It's meant for a video
I don't know
podcast.
what to podcast. I'm learning here.
I find, and this is just for general knowledge, I don't even know why I'm talking about it, but I find that most people are listening in their car for those first like 10, 15 minutes to get to know you more, and then they jump to video to do the rest. So you're doing great.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's how it shows. And once you create it, you're going to be taken to your console.firebase.com. And then in there, you can add all the things that you want to add. And one thing which is interesting is because Firebase is also part of Google Cloud Platform. So if you were to also go to the Google Cloud Platform console, you could see everything, not in the same way, but in that platform, you could see everything. And also when I'm working with Firebase functions or different things that I want the logs or something to go more in depth, I always end up going to the Cloud console anyway. So I don't know, this one is cooler for when I'm doing something with the database or something like that. But in the end, when I need something, I don't know, more in depth, I go to the Cloud one. And then we are going to create the Firebase data store, which is a NoSQL cloud database. I've been using the real-time database for many years. And then in my last talk, people were like, enough, let's try to use some Firestore. You've been doing too much real-time database. So, okay, I'm switching. I'm listening to you. So the way that I felt, because this one is a document, was a bit different how to set everything up, but after you do it a few times, you also get the hang of it. So I clicked to create the database, and then I had to set the location. So the one nearest me is Europe. For you, it would be the United States. And then because this one was a test, I put in test mode. But again, we're talking about authentication and things which are important. So in the end, it would be important to put it in production mode. And then I also use cloud functions for Firebase. They are very important because they are a serverless framework that automatically run your backend, and it also scales. So if more people start to interact with it, more events are triggered, it can deal with that for you. So you don't need to manage and scale your own servers. And then to use functions, you also have to set your billing account. Probably you had created it in the previous step, and then you would link the billing account that you created or that you chose. And then, so everything I've done here, it was in the dashboard. And then I'm going to talk about how I do things also from the command line. So from the command line, the first thing that I would have to install is the Firebase tools. I have many tabs open here. Yeah, so the first one is Firebase tools. We install that globally. And then you have to do Firebase login. At that point, when I'm doing the events, I see that people, they have like an account with several Google accounts. And that's always where we spend most of the time of the workshops, because they set a billing account in one email, they go to another one, they log into a different one, they authenticate with the different one. So what I would say is maybe open an incognito tab or to do something to make your life easier. Log into the correct account. You're laughing because you've been through that.
I've been through it with others. I don't know, like viciously often try to keep everything on a single account. So because of that, I used to have like 10 different Firebase billings, and I'm like, oh, this is too much.
And then after that, I'm using Firebase admin. By the way, this project, I use generation 1, but it is time. We shouldn't be using generation 1 so much anymore. It's good to start doing generation 2. I actually wrote a blog post, and it's also very easy when you go to the documentation to how to migrate from 1 to 2. 1 second. From 1 to 2. And then for us to initialize the functions from the project that we created, mostly everything is Firebase init something. And then after that, if you hadn't created a project before, you would be prompted to create a new project, or you could use an existing project, which is my case. Then you can choose the programming language. For mine is JavaScript, but as Alex was saying, we can also use TypeScript and Python to write your cloud functions. And then to set everything up, all the dependencies that I'm using for this project are Vonage auth for the verify, the one-time code that we receive, the Vonage server SDK, Axios, CORS. When I was doing everything on localhost before using Firebase, I didn't need CORS, but then I did. .env, Firebase admin, and Firebase functions. And these two, if you're using generation 2, you would install them in a different way. And then you set everything in the Vonage account. I don't know if you ever heard of Vonage before, but Vonage, as I showed you from this example here, we have the Verify API, there is the SIM swap APIs, other network APIs. For now, the number verification, there's things to send, SMS, video, there's everything that you can think of communication, they're doing that. So you set up your Vonage account. And then in that, you can start coding. As you start, you get 2 euros, should be about $2, for you to start trying everything else out, not only for this project, but anything that you have on your mind, as long as they're not spam or bad things. Yeah, so you create your account, and then you have to go to applications and create a new application. So this one could be like multi-factor authentication. You click to generate a public and a private key that downloads a file to your computer. You add that to your, in my case, a JavaScript node project. You add it there. And that private key, as we were talking about before, is also used to create our JWT. And then you choose which of the capabilities that you want to use. I chose verify to send the one-time code. At some point in the beginning of when I was thinking what to do, I was using the messages to kind of tailor more SMS messages, but in the end it was too much, so I gave up on that one. And I kept the network APIs to, as it says here, to combat fraud, manage your account, and much more with our cutting edge network APIs. That one is really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I had to add my environment variables, which are so there are two ways that you can add. The first way that I attempted this one and I failed. So the ones that I had to use were the Vonage application ID. Each application comes with an ID that you can find on your dashboard. The Vonage private key, which is a very long string that is in that file that we downloaded, and the Vonage JWT that you can generate from the console or from a website. So these two, because they were very long, I hit a wall because that just wouldn't work. Then I was trying to use some methods like remove the carrier line, remove this, remove that. And then in the end, I spent more than an hour in that. I was like, no, this is not working for me. This is supposed to be something easy and quick. And then I went on the Firebase documentation, and you can actually, I don't know if you have been using .env, if you know what that is, but you can use it the same way. You can have a .env file that goes with your Firebase deploy. So I didn't have to change anything to that, and it actually made my life a lot easier as a developer.
The one concern, do you have like private APIs in there? Like you
Yeah.
wouldn't want to ship that to your hosting code though. So you're just doing that to your Firebase functions, right?
Yes,
Gotcha.
but I was actually looking to that. There is one thing in the cloud called cloud. Oh, let me see if I can remember. Do you know the name? The cloud password.
The secrets.
Secrets. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna also recommend. It's probably more of a standard these days to use that as well, because you can version it and grab things from it too.
So what's the name? The actual name? Google Cloud.
I believe it's
Secret
Manager, right?
Secret Manager, yes. So Secret Manager is what we're talking about. So for the people watching, do it that way.
Yeah, and you can also do that with the Firebase command line as well. So you can what Amanda showed is config, and the other way is secrets. Now there is a very small fee associated with the secret side of things, so just be aware of that, I guess.
That's very cool. And then because, as I was saying before, everything that you're doing, Firebase and cloud, they are in the end the same thing. You could also add it to your project, and as you're saying, you can deploy it with the Firebase command as well. I don't actually know the command. I haven't gone very far with that, but I'm sure we can go in the documentation and add that one. But that's a very good shout. Thank you. Yeah, so we have everything. So once we write all that code, which is available on the GitHub that I shared with you, I'm not going deep down in code here, you can test it out. When I started years ago, I didn't know about the emulator. And then here I was, everything I was testing, I was deploying, and it takes time. Don't do that. There's something called emulators. So you can actually emulate everything that you're using. You can emulate, so for instance, all the credentials and everything that I have stored, it wouldn't appear in my local one. So you have to create a new one, and you can do everything like locally. It's a blessing. I love emulators.
Have you tried out IDX at all?
No.
It's now open to I believe fully open to the public. And IDX is like VS Code, but it's in your browser. And so you can spin up different environments. And one of the coolest things is like, you don't have to worry about downloading emulators or anything like that. You can just have them directly there. So definitely check that out.
Into the IDE?
In IDX. Yep.
IDX. Okay, I have to.
Yeah, so IDX, you can spin up a Firebase project and immediately like just jump, and it's like VS Code, but it's web-based instead of local, and that way you don't have to worry about like keeping your emulators up to date and running Java, and like it's nice, especially like for people. I don't know if they're doing this on purpose, but like with Chromebooks and stuff that don't have the power, they can just jump into an environment like that.
So which I'm seeing, I just Google search, is it the .dev, idx.dev? Is it?
It should be idx.google.com.
Okay, Project IDX, I found it.
Yeah, there you go. Here,
Awesome.
I can put it on the screen for everybody else too.
I don't know how much you who is watching or listening is learning, but I'm just learning tons here.
And you can do any kind of different project, but there should be like a version, and I'll show that after you're done. And
Alex, you're making me update my entire blog post, which is not out yet. Like it's
no, these are just small. These are just small tips. Yours is great.
I love it. Thank you. Yeah, so you can use this or that for testing, but basically better than deploying all your functions to testing. Don't do it. And then with a single command, you can quickly deploy web pages to a global CDN or content delivery network. And then in my case, it would be to that project ID that I created. Let me see if I remember. Was it web.app? As simple as that. And then that's how it would look like. You click on hosting, you click to get started. It asks you just a few questions, and then you set all these things up. And then you go back to your IDE and you do Firebase deploy. You can do Firebase deploy and it deploys everything, or you can choose what you're deploying, like deploy hosting or deploy functions. And that's it. And then in the end, after we've done all that, we would navigate to the page and see everything that we've seen before. But in our case, we would add all the recommendations that we had here, and it would be even more secure and fun. So this is one of the demonstrations that I wanted to show you on how I use some of the Firebase services with a project that previously had none of it, and it actually helped a lot. Other than that, so this is the presentation. I just wanted to talk more about some blog posts and videos that I done. Is that okay?
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been kind of learning, and I don't know, as I learn, I write blog posts and videos about it. So I wrote one about building an appointment scheduler using Node, Firebase, and Vonage. All the links are going to be available. Also, I always like to create content, both video and blog. I just think there are people learn in different ways. So there's also videos and blog posts on send and receiving messages with Firebase functions. Then I migrated that same one to show you how you can do something from generation 1 and generation 2. Then I gave a talk on how Firebase helped me land this dream job that I'm doing right now. That basically with all the projects, everything that I'd done, in the end, I had created a portfolio of things and given talks and talked to people. And in the end, I just found myself, okay, so I traveled, I don't know how many countries. I gave so many talks. I actually have done something cool. So it helped me in the end. And then there's also something called Firebase extensions. Have you ever done anything with extensions, Alex?
Yeah, I actually use extensions quite a bit, especially for like Stripe to do when you log into CodingCat to subscribe to our courses. It's built with Stripe. I used to use Algolia quite a bit for that extension. I have not used any of the Vonage extensions though, so tell me more.
Yeah, so as you're saying, there are pre-packaged solutions. So I have an app and I want to add something to that. I would go to the Firebase extensions, and then I would, so each extension has different things that you have to add, may it be environment variables or other things that you have to create. So basically, as you click to add to it, it would guide you on how you can add. And talking about Vonage, my colleagues, they have created 2 using communication APIs, which are create multi-party video calls and the Vonage messages API that you can send messages by adding it to your project. And then, so they show how they build it. There are the step-by-step. There is the GitHub where you can see everything. And even you watching right now, if you wanted to create an extension, you can also create one. So it's cool.
Nice. These are awesome.
Yeah, so that's a bit of everything I've been working on these days. I'm saying thank you, but I think we still have some minutes to talk.
I know I have the links and we'll put them on CodingCat. But most of those blog posts are on developer.vonage.com, correct?
Yes, the /blog.
Yep, /blog. Sweet. Awesome. So to finish things up, we are going to talk about our perfect picks. I didn't do it enough emphatically. So we're going to talk about our perfect picks. There we go. Gotta get all the cat things in, right?
You actually have a cat?
I do. She is very loud though, so I always keep her out of my room when we're doing podcasts. She loves to be by her mom, so we're spoiled. We both work remote. She's upstairs and I'm downstairs. Yeah, and she, I should find it. I should make a picture and keep it on my desk cover so I can show people. But I don't have one. So my perfect pick is newly released, and it shocked me because this has probably been the most requested thing since I've been using Firebase, like back before Google owned Firebase. This is called Data Connect, and it's basically a SQL database that you can use with Firebase. So you can now use PostgreSQL, utilizing like Cloud SQL in GCP. So the interesting thing about this is for now, and I don't know if they have it on here. I think when you sign up, Data Connect is not fully available. You have to like request access. So here's the sign up for. I'm afraid to click this button on screen. Here we go. So it's part of a private preview at the moment, but it will be kind of coming out to the larger world. So definitely request it though. They seem to be granting that for most people that are interested in doing it. It's a different take on it though. It's basically I've heard it kind of given two different ways, but it's query based or schema based, how you build it. So you're almost building up like a GraphQL layer with it. And when you do that, it'll do the database migrations underneath that you need to, but it also provides a nice layer for the calls too. So it's GraphQL calls as well on the other side of it. So I've started playing around with it. Again, the IDX piece is huge for this, especially if you don't have the preview for a Firebase project. You can sit there in IDX and actually use this all day long locally in the emulator. So the emulators have this now, which is beautiful and has saved me some headaches already. I don't know if I have much more. Yeah, Firebase has a SQL database.
I just requested access yesterday, hoping they look. If you're watching,
yeah, if you're watching, please grant this. Yeah, so the coolest part, or one of the coolest talks that I saw at I/O, was using AI, but it was using Postgres Vector, which I'm totally botching the name on that. I think it's called Vector PG, so it's in Postgres, and it's unbelievable like how easy it is. So you can actually kind of using vectors, you can actually use Firestore as well, but it's not typed like it is in Postgres. And once you kind of make that decision or check that out, it's a huge difference. So the one thing I want to clarify for folks is that this will be, unlike most things Firebase, this will have kind of more of a fee to it. However, they're kind of throwing that fee away for like the first 3 to 6 months, maybe longer. But for now, as people get used to it, they don't want to charge people to try it out. But if you look at the underlying, like what it costs for Cloud SQL and things like that, it's definitely going to be more expensive for your project. So don't fully dive in until you understand like long term what the impacts are. But yeah, that's my perfect pick. Amanda's perfect pick.
Yeah. So this year I didn't get to go to Vegas for Next or Mountain View for Google I/O, but I'm going to Google I/O Connect in Berlin. I was just telling Alex that like I've always been to all these events. Like even during my honeymoon in Japan, I went to Cloud Next in Japan. So I have a baby. She's little. She's almost 2 years old now. So I'm trying to go to events which are near me. So I'm just very keen. I know I won't get to see the actual announcements because they are out, but going there, doing the workshops, talking to people, and at that point, people are going to have used what was announced. So we are going to have more, I think even more conversations than the ones that you have on the days when they are announced. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think just between you and I, there's going to be a couple additional things coming out because they weren't ready. So there will be some sneak peeks coming. I'm curious. We started to talk about like if we have met in person, where it would have been. But you asked me a great question. Now I'm going to ask it kind of back to you. Like, what is your favorite like venue that you've been to for a conference and why?
I think I'm going to say it for the wrong reasons.
Oh, I think it's fine. Like sometimes it becomes like a personal reason. Like all my friends are at X, or I'm just curious.
So when I went to the Moscone, not the first year, but I don't actually remember the year that we had next there. I think it was like the second year in a row when they had it there. The second year, they hired the food court in front of it, and you could eat as much as you wanted. Food number one, I ate so many things. So that was a very good. I actually really love the Moscone, especially because you can go up and down, you have space.
Yeah,
And when you go to these events that you don't see your friends from the community for such a long time, just having space to go up, so let's go and see the demonstrations, and you actually, because in there they bring you all the demos and things, and you can try like the pods of Kubernetes. And I just feel that every time I go there, the demos, they're really nice.
yeah.
Salesforce always brings loads of things. I really like the Moscone Center.
That's awesome. I love
Yeah,
that. At IO this year, I just told my wife this the other night. Something that blew my mind was they used reusable containers. So they would like create like a wrap or a sandwich or something like that, and they would put it basically in like a Tupperware or Ziploc or whatever you want to call it, a sealable but reusable container. And I had to applaud them for that. I'm like, that reduced so much waste from that event. It was unbelievable. So like you could wander off with it and then go eat and then find like a little station to drop it back off so they could take it away and wash it and reuse it again. So love that.
yeah.
Just in terms of like weird little quirks at these events, I really
Yeah,
enjoy that.
you get so many people going, doing these things, they actually make a difference. And if
Yeah.
all of these events people start doing that, that's going to
Yeah,
be considerable.
totally. I mean, the large events like that are so wasteful and expensive and everything else. So, they did have some nice booths set up kind of outside. They'd have like a web tent and a mobile tent, and out in front of those, they had like demonstrations you could jump into, and you
Are you
could,
talking about IO?
yeah, IO, yeah. And so you could talk like directly with the Angular team. They were there showing off a little app and like haven't seen you guys in person since like NGConf and like 3 years ago or whatever it was. And it's like it's just nice to see people and like finally get to talk with people in person again. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I remember at one IO, I went to the accessibility booth. And then I was building a website back then for a company, and I didn't think about accessibility. It was not something, I was in the beginning of my career. And then I went there and they had all these tools and showed me like, this is what your website looks to people. And I was just appalled. Like it was
Yeah,
horrible. And then I just went back. I changed everything in the website. The PMs were like, but that's going to add too much. I don't care. We have to do it. I have to see how people are. Like they jump from the nav bar to the bottom to, like, it's not working for people. We have to include them. So
totally.
all these things that you can do, from the simplest thing to the most advanced, just going there and having interactions and conversations with people, it completely change your perspective.
Yeah, if you ever want to like dive deep into accessibility, Ben Myers is fantastic at it. So we actually did a podcast. Let me quickly search here. It was probably a year ago, maybe. No, gosh, it's been so long. Look at this. So 9/7 of 22, Ben was on the pod and he blew my mind, like with the different tools and capabilities that are out there. So it's definitely easy for folks that like don't have any sort of accessibility issues in their life to like why do you care, like we're part of the 95 percenters. And like it's amazing when you see the tools and the impact you could have just by slightly updating certain things on your site. It's massive. So definitely check that out. I've run a couple accessibilities on mine and it's still not great. It's definitely a tough thing to get through, but Amanda, any last comments about Vonage, DevRel, anything fun?
I think I sum it all up. I think that maybe I think I didn't share. Like, if you have any questions about this demo or anything in general, we have community Slack. So if you search Vonage developer community Slack, you can join us and you can just share your successes, ask your questions, and we're there for you.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thanks so much for showing us the demo and coming on the podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me. Bye.